The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Journyx Customer Training Webinar, DCAA-compliant time management using Journyx solutions. My name is Erin McCaffrey and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We know your time is valuable and we hope that you leave today's webinar with useful timesheet knowledge. Just to let you know, you can expand the screen for better viewing using the percent icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can submit questions online anytime during the presentation via the Questions tab. I'll be collecting these as the presentation goes forward and reading them at the end during our Q&A time. If we don't get to your question in the Q&A portion, we will take note of your question and answer it following the webinar. Everyone will receive a follow-up email containing a link to these questions and answers. After the webinar, you will have the opportunity to complete a survey. This survey will provide us with feedback that we can use to improve future training webinars. We want to ensure that we're providing you with the knowledge necessary to be successful with Journyx. At this time, I'm going to hand the webinar over to Meredith Zachritz, Director of Product Management.
Thanks, Erin, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to spend some time looking at some of the key features in Journyx timesheet that are used to build the DCAA-compliant time management processes. We'll also take a look at the DCAA toolkit that we offer to further automate processes. You may hear me accidentally refer to timesheet as a DCAA-compliant product, but really there's no such thing as DCAA-compliant software. It's the actual process definition that's either compliant or not. So you can design and implement a compliant process for your time and cost tracking using nothing but a pen and a piece of paper. However, manual paper-based processes are usually time-consuming, they're prone to error, and they don't offer a very robust audit trail. So what our software and tools really do is make it easier to design the process, automate it, and then retain all that necessary information required for auditing your process. So let's go ahead and jump straight in to our demo. We'll start out by covering some of the features we have for enforcing accuracy and compliance when your employees and contractors are capturing that time worked against government contracts. So the first thing that you have to consider is access to the right list of projects and selections for your other time tracking details. And that may be, the type of work or the billing status and so on. Those are configurable and up to you and the type of details that you need to track for internal and contract purposes. Now, timesheet provides the groups feature that allows you to determine who has access to what information. And that includes projects tied to government contracts. So my sample user here, my demo user, gets his lists of projects based on the groups that he belongs to. Now, Project Execute allows you to take access a step further and explicitly assign resources to a project so that only those who are assigned to the projects are allowed to enter time against it. So we'll quickly jump to an administrator view and take a look at where those groups are controlled and how I can add my project lists and my user lists so that they get the correct access. And then in Project Execute, we have the ability to create a project and then actually assign individual resources. So two ways to do it. Now, in addition to limiting project access based on groups or assignments, you can also set up project dependencies that filter your other time tracking details based on the project that's selected. So here we'll show how this works on the time entry screen. Whoops. I can type that in. So I select a project and my lists change based on what is available and valid for this selected project. This feature is especially helpful in situations where, for example, contracts require time to be captured or labeled in a specific way, or maybe they include rules about when time can be billed and when not. So with specific dependencies, you can ensure that your employees are not able to pick invalid selections when entering their time against a specific project. And again, to show you where, for either projects or scheduled projects, we can go and look at that customer support project that I selected and modify my dependencies here. And we see that our lists were filtered by our selected dependencies. So now that we've looked at some of the ways that we can ensure our employees have the right access to their time tracking details, we can move on to actually capturing time and monitoring time entry compliance. Now, it's not uncommon for employees to get behind on time entry, but we have had some DCAA auditors who require proof of daily time entry and audit trails, of course, for who is making these changes and when. So our DCAA toolkit includes options for keeping up with daily time entry and tracking all those changes that are made to a timesheet. As an example, our demo user, received a notice, an email today, letting him know that his entries for the previous day did not meet his total daily requirements. And so in his case, he's required to enter 8 hours a day. And today at 9 a.m., he received a notice that says his time is not complete for Tuesday. So we'll take a look at the toolkit here and some of the settings that you have. So this toolkit allows you to decide if and when you want to send those daily reminders, as well as set a custom daily minimum for each employee in your company. So you have control over what goes in that email reminder. You can control the subject and the text of that email reminder, and then you can control when these are sent. So that you can create a schedule so that they go out the same time every day. The DCAA does have a guideline that any time that that needed to be entered for the previous day should be complete by 9 a.m. the following day. So you could set your schedule to go to run at 9 a.m. each day. Now the daily minimum can be set on a user-by-user basis. So we'll go ahead and go to our user management area. When you set up a user in Journyx, there's a field for setting that user's weekly hours. And the value you put in this field will be divided by 5 days to determine that daily minimum hour requirement for daily time entry. So if an employee has not entered the minimum number of hours for the previous day by 9 a.m. on the current day, he's going to receive this compliance notice telling him that he needs to complete his timesheet the previous day, assuming you choose to use this tool. Now the DCAA has enforced a unique time entry constraint that we can see on our user's screen here in the form of a special corrections feature. Now many companies are required to track changes to timesheets that are made after they're signed and submitted for approval, but the DCAA has taken auditing a step further and in many cases requires tracking and documentation of all changes to a timesheet. So as soon as you've created a time entry, should you decide that you've done it incorrectly, you need to add time, etc., you're going to have to document that change. So what we have here right now is the highest level of time entry auditing being enforced on this user's timesheet. And what that means is that he's going to be required to add a reason for any entry that he corrects. So we'll go ahead and say he came back to this project later. And say OK. And so then managers and auditors can refer back to these changes in documentation in audit reports. Now again, while we talk about correction levels, this is something that we configure under system settings and approvals and auditing. And we can see for our level of auditing for changes that I've got it at the highest level, level 5, but you have a variety of options depending upon what your experience is with your DCAA auditors. This highest level, as I've mentioned, has been required in some cases. Some people were moving from a manual paper-based process where they were making all of these changes and notations for reasons to an automated process and wanted to see it reflected in the software. Now, when our demo user goes to submit his timesheet for approval, so we'll go ahead and do that real quick. that you can run additional checks and rules on an employee-by-employee basis to make sure that the employee has entered his time correctly. So data validation that we've set up for each type of employee helps them to be sure that they've entered their time correctly. At the same time that we're validating the data, custom billing rates and payroll rules can be applied to the time for reporting and export to financial systems. Both rate rules and a PS tool called the DVT can be used to set up enforcement rules, and then the rate rules are also used to apply those custom calculations for costing and billing. So again, to show you where you would locate these, we have policies and rules under configuration, and you have the option to create and edit your rules for enforcement or for markup, and then you include them in a policy that's assigned on a user-by-user basis. So the rules that validate and restrict the entries help to ensure that timesheets are corrected before any human intervention and big corrections process is required. The rules that mark up the time allow you to compare your actual costs and revenues to your contracts and forecasts for budget and invoicing controls. So we can see here that our demo user is able to correct his timesheet before it gets submitted to any approver, and no human intervention is required. So we'll go ahead and correct it and submit it one more time, because it tells him exactly what he needs to do to get it right. Now, when he's completed and submitted his timesheet, approval workflows will determine the process for his time approval. These approvals can be created automatically based on your company org chart. So there's an org chart manager that can be used to create all of your approvals, or you can set them up manually. And most of you probably know where to find this, but we'll take a look at approval plans under management, where you can create your various workflows. And so you can include any person in the approval workflow who needs to review time, perhaps to fulfill contract requirements. And you can have these approvals. The approvals we're looking at here are based on the user's entire timesheet, or you can set up approvers that are tied to approving time for a specific project. And in that case, you would go to your project area and set those up on a project-by-project basis. So again, approval can be based on a total timesheet view or on specific project work. Now, after our demo user is finished entering his time, we'll say that he's wanting to take some vacation, and so he wants to see if he has enough time to take a day off, a 3-day weekend coming up. And so his accruals will let him check to see if he's got enough vacation time to take a day off. These accruals can be reset annually in Journyx. They can be accrued based on time worked, like comp time, or they can be imported from accounting systems. And he can use them to plan his leave time. And then, of course, they're automatically deducted when he actually takes the time off. So, knowing that he has enough time, he can go to his leave calendar and request some time off. The Journyx system includes notifications for letting his time approver know when he's requested leave, and it also lets him know when his approver has actually signed off on that leave. So once his time off request has been approved, he doesn't have to do anything else. It's just going to be loaded into his timesheet automatically on the day that he takes the time, unless he cancels it. This is important because DCAA does not allow future time entries. So leave requests are not actually future time entries. They are leave requests that only become time entries on the day that the time is taken, and therefore it meets DCAA standards. So now that we've looked at some of the ways employees use timesheet to enter their work data and stay compliant with all of the time entry rules, let's go ahead and take a look at how our supervisors use the system to monitor accuracy and compliance, and then also automate those business processes. When our supervisor logs in, she can automatically see the numbers of timesheets and expenses awaiting her approval, and she may have the ability to approve these based on the summary view that we see here. or she may be required to click through and view the sheets individually. So we'll take a look at the sheet that we just submitted. In the sheet view, she can see all the information that our end user could see while he was entering his time. Supervisors and other approvers also have the option to review rate information associated with the timesheet. So this is where your custom pay and billing calculations are shown in the rate reports that accompany this approval view. So that, as for an example, payroll administrators can review cost information, or contract managers can review billable amounts and rules and so forth. Now, our supervisor can also review those change reasons associated with change records, and she does that by clicking on any note icons that have writing in them. You can see the little writing there, and that allows her to know that there was some sort of change associated with that record. And again, she can see our demo user's reason, she can see the amount by which it changed, when it changed, and so forth. And this is the same information that can be presented to auditors. Now, after our supervisor reviews the information, she can take action. She can return it to the user and request that the user make specific corrections, or she can approve it and pass it up the chain of approvers to close out the period. Our supervisor can also keep track of time entry compliance for her group by using the Organization Compliance Viewer. Color-coded icons tell her who has submitted timesheets for the period and who's late, and she can click on those to take action. She can send emails to the user and so forth to ensure that everybody gets their time submitted in a timely manner and that they can close out the periods to meet contract requirements. Now, there's some additional DCAA-specific tools that allow our supervisor to monitor daily details of compliance and maintain hard copies of records needed for future audits. So let's take a look at our daily compliance monitoring. And this just gives our supervisors a way to stay on top of time entry on a daily basis. We're going to go ahead and look at what's happened so far this week. This tool includes scores for each user's timeliness in getting that time entered each day. And the scores are based on the number of hours after time is entered after a daily deadline. And that's, for example, that 9 a.m. the next day deadline that you have for your daily email reminders. The zeros indicate time was entered before the deadline or is not yet due for the day. And then the numbers show how many hours after the deadline the complete time was entered. Another supervisor tool that is available as part of the DCAA toolkit allows you to run timesheet reports for printing and physical signatures. Now, the DCAA does recognize that submit for approval action, the button in the software systems, as the equivalent of a signature. But some of our clients like to maintain hard copies as backup for audits, and then we have had auditors who have required hard copies to be sent, like telephone books of hard copies to be sent to them as part of the audit process. So this just makes it easy to print your timesheets should they be requested, or if you choose to actually keep them as records, you can do so on a regular basis. We're going to go ahead and just pick some specific people here and go through last week. And so as you can see, you have options for exporting, saving, emailing either individual timesheets, or you can print and email all of them in a report. And again, this is basically backup for auditors or at the request of auditors. So I had mentioned that Journyx maintains a record of every entry that's created, edited, or deleted. This includes to have audit logging on. Let me show you where that is very quickly. That's an important detail that we wouldn't want to miss. So under configuration and system settings, we have logging settings. Oh, and I didn't have my audit logging on. How about that? We'll go and make a change to Andrew's timesheet real quick so that I can show you the audit logging feature. So let's reopen that. So obviously this is something that you want to start with to have your audit logging on. There we go. So we'll go back and we'll make one more change here just so that we can see our audit log. Oops. I have to click on the record. So we'll up it one more. Change for log. Okay. Submit for approval. There we go. Now we'll have some logging information. So back to our audit log. This audit log is obviously at a certain point going to contain a large amount of data. So this DCAA tool includes the option to search the log for very specific information that you may need for monitoring a process or providing an auditor with detailed information. And you can search by date and type of record and the users and the projects and so forth. The option here to choose a log helps to manage the size of your log, so your company may choose to archive logs periodically by date, but the search tool allows you to continue to access the ones that you need. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at what our demo user did today to his timesheet, or how about this very last bit that I just did. And we're interested in time records. I want to select a specific user and preview our audit log information. And so you might, like I said, you might use this to verify processes, or an auditor might ask you to pull information on a specific record, a specific employee or project, or it may be a date range. In any case, the search tool makes it really easy to find the audit information that you're looking for. Now, when supervisors and the financial managers have completed all those approvals and reviewed the reports for the period, they can then use standard integrations such as Journyx Account Link for QuickBooks, or some customizable tools that we have such as the Payroll Rules Engine to process that data. They can then send all that information to financial systems for additional processing and close out of the period. Like other features in the Journyx system, these integrations are available via web browser, and they can be run by anybody who's familiar with your financial closeout process. So the same accounting information can also be used to set up your Journyx system so that you can link the automation of your compliant time management processes with your compliant accounting processes. The last thing that we'll take a look at today is the forecasting capabilities in Project Execute. And they allow you to manage contract requirements at a very detailed level. We're going to start here on this project status dashboard that gives me access to all the high-level planning and tracking information associated with my project. Now, while the timesheet product does allow you to enter high-level budget numbers for tracking against actuals, it doesn't provide the tools required to forecast your costs and revenues based on the specific work assignments. So who is assigned to complete a piece of work can certainly affect your project costs, and in some cases, contracts include specific rules about what can be billed based on the type of employee who completes the work. So what this means is that the way you go about assigning your employees to work on contracts can definitely have an impact on your project profitability. So I can continue to enter my high-level budget numbers here, but I may be preparing these based on forecasts that I prepare by making employee assignments in Journyx and running those numbers. So let's go ahead and click through to some of our assignments. We're at our high-level project, so we're going to move to some of our tasks that have assignments. So I have the ability to assign individuals or possibly placeholders for a type of employee to the individual tasks. And then I can look at the project and resource rates, cost and billing rates, to determine whether my assignments perhaps maximize revenues or minimize costs. And I have reports that help me to see how my assignment choices will impact my project. I'll take a look at one of those. So what I've got here is a billable forecast report for a specific project. And I can take a look at the people that I chose to assign to each task and see what that revenue will look like based on those assignments. And I can adjust my assignments and do the same thing for comparison. So by capturing my forecasted financials at the employee assignment level, I'm also able to enforce special contract rates that apply to the type of work being done on the project or the type of employee who is completing the work. Now, it's worth mentioning that in addition to the standard reports that you see right here, we also offer Journyx Report Link, an optional reporting engine for both Timesheet and Project Execute, and it allows you to tap into all the power and flexibility of Microsoft Excel pivot tables. It's also accessible in the Reports menu, but what you do is you jump into an Excel template. So we'll do that real quick. Now, unlike a simple, well, I got muted. Just a moment. Let's log in one more time. So this isn't a simple export to Excel. It provides you with direct real-time access to your Journyx data. So you can build reports and add your custom calculations and update your data at any time with the click of a button. This is a sample template of time broken out by functional department, but there are also DCAA feeds. For example, that daily time entry compliance report is also available in Report Link so that you can pull it into Excel and do comparisons and calculations in pretty much in any way you see fit. So if you've got some basic knowledge of how to use pivot tables, you can access and manipulate and analyze all that information in your Journyx system pretty much in any way that you desire. So we've seen the most popular features for designing, enforcing, and automating DCAA-compliant processes. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and open up the session for questions.
Thank you, Meredith. At this time, we don't have any questions, but I am going to give everybody about another minute to get those entered in, and you can submit those via the question tab. We will be hosting a new training webinar on the second Wednesday of each month at 2:00 p.m. Central Time. You can find upcoming webinars in the Journyx user community, as well as all of the archived recorded webinars. You will receive a link to the recording in a follow-up email. And if you do have any additional questions following this, please contact either Journyx support or your account manager. Again, there will be a survey available for you to fill out at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is very valuable to us. And I don't see any questions coming in, so I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and have a great day.